The Small Epiphany in Oporto. You'll have to excuse my Portuguese pronunciation, but yours isn't probably much better. What brought it on is hard to say. There was no organ playing that morning in the cathedral, and I'm susceptible to organs in vaulted spaces. I don't remember feeling particularly transparent either, as I do sometimes when a bolt of perception is about to hit. On the contrary, I was feeling rather cluttered, Oporto being a raucous, cluttered, cluttering sort of city. It had nothing to do with spiritual force lines. I have no time at all for feng shui. All the same, the cathedral in Oporto is sublimely situated on a crag above the old red-roofed quarter of the city, which topples and slides down the hill in a maze of crooked, scabby lanes to the river. Up here, flying buttresses and soaring towers with cupolas. Down there, tumult, crumbling tenements, and then water. Up here, silence and a rose window glowing like the eye of heaven itself. Down there, bustling squalor, cats fighting, roosters crowing, women screeching, fish frying, and then the water. Entering the cathedral in a state of mild curiosity, I felt at first as if I'd wandered into a Hindu temple doubling as a railway station. Crowds of Belgians and Germans were milling about in stony vastness, with backpacks and bags of shopping, staring at the idols, the paintings, the altars, and each other. There was a low hum of conversation echoing around the nave. Cameras flashed. A tent-shaped Englishwoman slapped her whining daughter. A graça de nosso Senhor Jesus Cristo. At the far end of the nave, I became aware of a robed figure, softly intoning something into a microphone. He was flanked by 6 women, no longer young, listening to him in reverential silence. Nobody else at all in that whole vast edifice seemed even to have noticed he was there. Slipping into a seat in the front row, I tried to cut myself off from the hubbub all around me for a moment or two and let the music of the priest's words wash over me. Deus Todo-Poderoso, os nossos pecados e nos conduza à vida eterna. I really couldn't understand much of that this man in gold-threaded vestments was saying, something consoling about Jesus and God omnipotent. But it hardly mattered. He kept speaking softly into the void, joined in murmured responses by his 6 parishioners. Gloria a vos, Senor, gloria, gloria. I looped in and out of his golden glorias. He was gold. The chancel behind him was a wildly soaring Baroque extravaganza in gold. Creo no Spirito Santo, creo na Igreja una, santa, católica, apostolica. The 6 old ladies and I sat floating on the sound of his gold-encrusted voice. But now there seemed to be a strange gulf opening up between us, and it seemed to be growing wider before my eyes. Hosanna nas alturas. I had the bizarre feeling that they were floating away from me, into the apse, leaving me behind in the nave. And not just away from me, but up. They were being gathered up. And then it struck me. Every last loose thread of these 6 women's lives had already been lovingly gathered up and woven into the sacred tapestry of the church. Their lives had been redeemed, not by understanding, not by seeing truth face to face, but by being gathered up into the church. For me, left stranded in my anorak in the front pew, there was no sacred tapestry to weave myself into, sacred being a word I had long since emptied of any meaning. No church, however universal, no priest, however gorgeously robed, no altar even carved from gold, no chalice, no bread or wine, no incantations, no relics, no temples or groves or stones or anything else in the universe to me was sacred. Hosanna nas alturas. Their cries of joy were growing slowly fainter as they receded from me with gathering speed. I felt a stab of anguish, no, not anguish exactly, but a pang of sorrow the widening gulf between us. They had found a way to redeem what I never could, the utter ordinariness of everyday existence. It's unlikely that they had much in their lives to be contrite about. And in any case, outright wickedness is never much of a problem. It's what Dostoevsky calls the lukewarm life that is difficult for people like me to rescue. All the bits that in a novel would have been edited out. O amor de Cristo, nosso unio. Now I could hardly hear them at all. Amen, amen, amen. And they shrank to nothing. When I came to my senses for the first time in my life, I thought to myself, I'm a Protestant. With the church bells angrily calling after me, I strode out of the cathedral and down into the Catholic morass of Oporto, towards the river. Well, in the final chapter, I've nearly finished, so don't panic, I plunge into the Catholic morass of Naples. And Naples, although once one of the most spectacularly beautiful cities in the world, we're told by past travellers, now appears diseased and decrepit. The perfect setting, in other words, for a meditation on aging. Gide had a marvellous old age, which the moralists can never forgive him for. Serene is the word that comes to mind. And I'd like to have one too, wouldn't we all? It's not easy, is it? The picture of laughing pensioners on the cover of seniors' magazines doesn't somehow tell the whole story. Well, I begin with a sense of falling. He's suspended in midair, this naked youth. Arms outstretched, long, graceful legs pointing skywards, is little more than an ochre streak, about to slice like a scimitar into a bluish sea, yet he's unforgettable. He's just a brushstroke on the lid of an ancient Greek tomb, the work of a few moments, probably, but of all the paintings you see at Paestum, the depictions of drinking parties, a boy playing in aulos, men singing, and even indulging in the spot of erotic play, nothing stays in the mind like the diver. He's been caught, this young man, or so they tell us, plummeting from life into the sea of death. For 2,500 years, he's been plunging without moving an inch towards the afterlife. It's quite literally a suspended sentence. On second thoughts, he's not plunging so much as hanging. He's just leapt into the air. He's just this moment kicked his legs up behind him. He's not quite yet falling. He's mortal, yet eternal. Doomed, yet unchanging. Caught by the artist at an ecstatic pinnacle. Is that why he wrenches the heart? From up here on the rooftop terrace of the Hotel Britannique, I can't see as far as Paestum. It's half a day's journey away, beyond the hills, above Sorrento to the south. I do have a sweeping view of the Bay of Naples, though, if I lean far out enough, as well as Capri, gleaming in the sun out to sea. The white ferries and pleasure boats heading out to the islands, or for the docks far below me near the Royal Palace, dot the bay like seagulls. From high up here, Naples looks spectacularly beautiful. There's a brazen extravagance about it, sprawled like this around its sweeping bay, palazzo piled on palazzo, almost inviting violation. Almost anyone you can think of did violate it. The Greeks, the Romans, the barbarians, the Spaniards, the Bourbons. No wonder wealthy Romans came here on vacation to eat, drink, and debauch themselves in the sun. It's the perfect setting. Yet I only have to cross the road in front of the hotel and start picking my way down the staircases into its clogged streets and laneways towards the sea to find myself engulfed by chaos and filth. I want to see what I might see, you see. I want to fall under a spell. I always do when I travel. But at a certain age, you know too much. All knowledge is like old age, Stendhal wrote, in Naples actually, whose worst symptom is the knowledge of life that prevents one from becoming passionate about anything, from behaving madly over nothing. Instead of admiring the ruins of the Temple of Jupiter, as I did 26 years ago, my imagination has changed all sorts of stupid things I've read about it. He longed, when he got to Naples, to drink of the waters of the river Lethe, to forget, in other words. Travel, I think, is partly about remembering, but it's also about forgetting everything. Well, I made an attempt to behave madly over nothing by going down to the Lungomare, the seafront down the hill from my hotel, where the waiter, Giovanni, hinted that on Sunday evenings I'd find a sort of carnival by the sea, food stalls and sideshow attractions swarming with hawkers, buskers and fashionable flaneurs. On a warm summer's evening, while watching the local youths diving off the breakwater, you might even find yourself jostled by half-naked skaters and joggers. Giovanni didn't phrase it quite like that, but he made it sound as if a stroll by the water might lift my spirits. Perhaps I'd be swept up by someone louche, but snappily dressed. Someone at a loose end, perched provocatively on the seawall, on the lookout for a bit of tomfoolery to pass the time, and be driven off to, and I quote, hit the city's coolest restaurants, bars and clubs for some designer dolce vita, in the words of my guidebook, which unfailingly looks on the bright side. But I'd seen it all before. At a certain point in life, one has. Everything feels repackaged. The crepe and ice cream wagons, the miniature train, the hoopla stall, the Africans selling belts and fake Louis Vuitton handbags. Even the gangs of teenagers in T-shirts emblazoned with jaunty slogans in English. I love beer, fuck work, and so on. I'd seen and heard and smelt it all before, hundreds of times. It felt like the umpteenth performance of a circus act I'd first thrilled to when I was 5. Would nothing transformingly beautiful ever happen again? Besides, everyone was sauntering about in tight packs of family and friends. There was plenty of heat, but no electricity. All I ended up feeling was old. I never feel old in Tunisia, which is where my river Lethe runs. Of course, I am old. Well, not old, but at the wrong end of middle-aged. Unlike the diver in Pestum, I've passed my ecstatic pinnacle. I'm falling. Well, I like to think that in writing this book, I am not falling, but like the diver at Pestum, diving, with I hope a certain exuberance, a touch of extravagance, and even a few graceful arabesques. And I hope if you read it, you enjoy the plunge. Thank you very much for listening. Nothing with a date in it, please. I can't remember dates.
You're feeling Protestantism in Portugal. How did that? What did you feel?
Question is about what I felt when I felt Protestant. I suppose what I feel is that a Protestant has no bosom in which to rest. A Protestant has no buffer zone between him or her and truth, with a capital T if you prefer. A Protestant, unlike a Catholic, has just truth and text. That's it. This doesn't mean you have no fun. I mean, you've only got to meet Tennessee Baptist, actually. I mean, particularly a black Tennessee Baptist. So they can have quite a lot of fun indeed. But it's a sense, I say here, of sufficiency that the Protestant prefers. You do not desire more than you are given. I mean, I have occasionally desired more than I've been given. Of course I have. Chips sometimes when I go past the fish and chip shop. But you should be grateful for your sufficiency. It was easy for Gide because he was fabulously wealthy, as was his wife, and had 2 castles in Normandy. But you see, that's not a sin in itself if you're a Protestant. He was given it. That was his sufficiency. I have a little house in Hobart. That's fine. I live with a Protestant who's an atheist. His mother is a Protestant, and she's an atheist. They are Protestant atheists. I can tell what kind of atheist you are. Jewish, Catholic, Protestant, from 2 kilometres away.
Do you feel a sense of exclusion from Roman Catholicism?
Exclusion from Roman Catholicism?
From the whole Catholic?
No more than I feel excluded from Mormonism, for example. No, I wouldn't say that I do. Not at all. I've got my thoughts, I've got my texts. I don't feel excluded from anything, except possibly the football fraternity. No.
Did you feel a resonance with the North African culture like you felt with Russian culture?
No, it's a different kind of feeling. I feel a resonance, as you put it, with Russian culture. I feel at home there up to a certain point. North Africa is utterly alien to me, and that's why I love to be there, because I am naked there. I am nobody. I don't exist. I can divest myself of everything I am at home. So it's an attraction of quite a different kind. It's a good question.
What for you is the romance or the exoticness that you mentioned before in North Africa?
What is the nature? Well, it's partly, you see, a recognition of my first grand adventure when I was 22, when I went to Morocco, actually, not Tunisia or Algeria. And I think, in some ways, as one goes through life, one does try to recapture something beautiful and essential that you feel you once had. And I suppose I'm trying to recapture that sort of magic. It's the alienness, but it's the smells, it's the colours, it's the clothes, it's eros in its widest sense. And I mean that. Of course, I mean also eros in the most common sense, but I mean eros in a much broader sense. The sensuality that is permitted there, anyway, it's not permitted, well, particularly in Sandy Bay, Tasmania, no. And I don't want to completely let it go. But it's not me, and so I have to go home. And that's all right too.
I'm curious as to where you're off to next.
Where am I off to next?
Apart from Tasmania.
Apart from Tasmania. I do actually love Tasmania, I have to say. I know I sound sort of rather rude about it. I haven't fallen in love with anywhere yet. That's the honest answer. And I don't really travel anymore, except for conversation. Conversation is what I find it's hardest, good conversation, to find in a small community. I mean, one has it with a handful of friends. But when I go to Paris, I don't go to the Pompidou Centre. I don't go to, well, I might go to Notre Dame, hoping the organ might be playing. But I go for conversation, because I think that in Europe, people know still better than we do how to converse. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel that that's so. But there's nowhere that is drawing me strongly at the moment.
Please thank Robert Dessaix.
Thank you.